The summer sun shone intensely over Baltimore when Gervonta Davis woke up that Saturday morning. After weeks of grueling training preparing for his next fight, he finally had a free day to take care of personal matters. The feeling of freedom was almost palpable as he had his breakfast. Watching through the apartment window the growing movement of the streets, he had decided it was time to fulfill an old dream: buying a special car for his mother, Catherine. She had always been his biggest supporter, working multiple jobs during his childhood to ensure he had what he needed. Now, with his consolidated career and million-dollar contracts, he wanted to repay all the sacrifice she had made for him over the years. The idea had emerged the previous week when Catherine casually mentioned that her car was having constant mechanical problems. She always spoke with resignation about financial difficulties, never asking for help directly. But Gervonta noticed the concern in her eyes every time the subject was mentioned during their phone conversations. He decided he would buy a luxurious and reliable SUV, something she could drive safely and with pride. He researched for hours on the internet, comparing models, reading reviews, and checking availability at dealerships in the region. He wanted it to be a complete surprise, so he carefully planned every detail so she wouldn't suspect anything. He wore simple clothes, jeans, sneakers, and a basic t-shirt, purposely avoiding any ostentation. He put on a low cap and a discreet mask, hoping to go unnoticed for a few minutes in that environment. He knew his fame could complicate the negotiation, so he preferred to keep a low profile. He put his cards and documents in his wallet, checked the dealership address on GPS, and left home with a smile on his face. Traffic was surprisingly calm for a Saturday, and during the journey, he imagined Catherine's reaction when receiving the keys. It would be a special moment, a tangible way to show his gratitude for all the sacrifices she had made. The anticipation of her joy made him even more determined to find the perfect car. Premium Motors' Baltimore dealership was impressive, with its gleaming glass facade and luxury cars shining under the sunlight. Gervonta parked his own car and walked through the lot, admiring the displayed vehicles. There were BMWs, Mercedes, Audis, and other eye-catching models, all impeccably clean and organized in perfect rows. Upon entering the showroom, he was greeted by the air conditioning and the sophisticated atmosphere of the environment. The walls were decorated with photos of classic cars and sales trophies, while soft music played in the background. Some customers circulated through the space, examining the displayed vehicles, accompanied by well-dressed salespeople who explained technical details and special features. Marcus Wellington, the salesperson who approached, was a man in his 40s, with an impeccable suit and a well-rehearsed commercial smile. His body posture and facial expression subtly changed when he assessed Gervonta's casual appearance, making judgments based on the simple clothes and youth of the potential customer before him. Gervonta explained that he was interested in an SUV for his mother, something reliable and well-equipped, preferably in the $80,000 range. Marcus listened with apparent attention, but his tone of voice carried an almost imperceptible condescension, as if he were dealing with someone who probably didn't have the financial means for such a purchase. The salesperson led him to a specific area of the showroom, showing more basic and economical models, completely ignoring the premium SUVs that Gervonta had initially mentioned. He explained technical features mechanically, without showing the enthusiasm he normally reserved for customers he considered more promising from a financial standpoint. Gervonta immediately noticed the different treatment, but decided to maintain patience and continue with the process. After all, his goal was to find the ideal car for Catherine, not to impress the salesperson. He continued asking specific questions about performance, warranty, and available options, demonstrating automotive knowledge that momentarily surprised Marcus. During the vehicle presentation, Marcus gradually showed less interest in helping Gervonta, answering questions in an increasingly superficial manner. When asked about financing and payment methods, the salesperson automatically assumed that a loan with long installments would be necessary, without even asking about the client's actual financial situation. The situation became more embarrassing when other customers arrived at the showroom. Marcus immediately excused himself and went to serve a middle-aged couple, leaving Gervonta waiting alone for almost 20 minutes. During this time, he observed how the salesperson treated other customers with deference and attention, offering coffee, explaining minute details, and showing genuine interest in closing deals. When he finally returned, Marcus seemed even more rushed and disinterested. He suggested that Gervonta think better about the purchase, perhaps considering used models or those with higher mileage, which would be more suitable for his budget. The condescension in his voice was now evident, transforming what should have been a pleasant experience into something uncomfortable and humiliating. Gervonta felt irritation growing but maintained his composure. He asked to see specifically a blue BMW X5 that had caught his attention since entering. Marcus visibly hesitated, claiming that specific model was already reserved for another customer, although there was no sign or indication that it was sold. The tension in the air became palpable when Gervonta insisted on at least seeing the specifications and price of the vehicle. Marcus reluctantly accompanied him to the car, but his body language made it clear he considered this a waste of time. He maintained physical distance, spoke robotically, and constantly checked his watch, as if he had more important commitments. The decisive moment came when Gervonta expressed real interest in buying the BMW cash, without financing. Marcus laughed discreetly, shaking his head with poorly disguised incredulity. His following words would completely reveal his prejudices, creating a situation that would completely change the course of that seemingly ordinary day. Marcus looked directly at Gervonta and, with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes, declared that he didn't believe he had the financial means to buy that specific vehicle. He again suggested that he look for used car dealerships in the region, where he would find options more realistic for his profile. The condescending tone was now unmistakable, transforming a commercial negotiation into a moment of deep humiliation. The situation worsened when Marcus insinuated that people like him generally couldn't get financing approved for high-category vehicles, even if they could gather a down payment. He spoke about credit checks, income verification, and other bureaucratic requirements, automatically assuming that Gervonta wouldn't meet the criteria established by the dealership for premium clients. Other store employees began observing the interaction, some whispering among themselves while pretending to organize documents or clean nearby vehicles. The feeling of being judged and publicly ridiculed made the experience even more painful. Gervonta felt his blood boil, but his education and maturity prevented him from reacting impulsively to the provocation. Marcus then made the definitive mistake. He looked directly at Gervonta and said with a condescending smile that he knew how it is. Sometimes young people want to impress with dreams too big for reality. He suggested it would be better to be more realistic about his financial possibilities. The words were like a slap, directly hitting Gervonta's dignity and self-respect. The boxer took a deep breath, mentally counting to 10 before responding. His voice remained calm and controlled when he asked to speak with the dealership manager, hoping that a person with more experience and professionalism could resolve the situation appropriately. Marcus hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but eventually agreed to call his supervisor. While waiting, Gervonta observed the dealership's movement with new eyes. He now saw how other customers were treated differently, noticing nuances in service that he had previously ignored. The discrimination wasn't just personal, it was systematic, based on superficial judgments about appearance, age, and ethnic origin. This perception awakened in him a determination that went far beyond buying a car. Regional manager Robert Hayes approached with a professional posture typical of someone who needs to resolve delicate conflicts. He greeted Gervonta politely, but his initial expression suggested he was prepared to support his employee's position. Marcus had clearly painted the situation as a problematic customer trying to buy something beyond his financial means, without mentioning his own inappropriate conduct. Gervonta calmly explained the entire situation, from his arrival to Marcus's veiled refusal to allow him to buy the BMW. He spoke about the differential treatment he observed, the constant condescension, and the prejudiced assumptions about his financial capacity. His narrative was precise and objective, without exaltation or unnecessary accusations, demonstrating impressive maturity in the face of the humiliation suffered. Robert listened attentively, occasionally casting uncomfortable glances at Marcus, who tried to minimize his previous comments. The manager gradually realized there was more to the story than his employee had initially reported. Gervonta's confident posture, his clear articulation, and knowledge about vehicles suggested that perhaps Marcus had made a serious error in judgment. It was then that Gervonta decided to reveal his identity. He took out his wallet and showed his ID, casually mentioning that he was a professional boxer. Robert initially didn't make the connection until Gervonta mentioned some of his most famous fights and his nickname, Tank. The manager's expression changed drastically when he finally understood he was facing one of Baltimore's most famous and successful athletes. Marcus visibly paled upon realizing the magnitude of his error. He had refused adequate service to a local celebrity, someone with millions of social media followers and million-dollar contracts. The realization that he could have closed a significant sale, in addition to potentially attracting other famous clients, made his discrimination even more painful from a professional standpoint. The atmosphere in the dealership changed instantly. Employees who had previously ignored the situation now watched with growing interest, some recognizing Gervonta and whispering his name. Robert immediately apologized profusely, promising to resolve the situation and ensure Gervonta received the best possible service. But the boxer had already made a decision that would surprise everyone. Instead of accepting the apologies and proceeding with the purchase, Gervonta surprised Robert by declaring he wouldn't buy anything at that dealership. He explained it was no longer about acquiring the vehicle, but about fundamental principles. He couldn't support an establishment that judged customers based on appearances, regardless of how they tried to remedy the situation after discovering his identity. Robert desperately tried to reverse the decision, offering significant discounts, free services, and even firing Marcus on the spot. Gervonta listened to all proposals patiently, but maintained his firm position. He argued that the problem wasn't just a poorly trained employee, but an organizational culture that allowed and even encouraged prejudiced judgments about potential customers. The boxer then made a proposal that left everyone perplexed. He would buy all the cars he could afford cash at that moment, but not for himself. He wanted to demonstrate that he had sufficient financial resources, not out of ego, but to prove an important point about not judging people by appearance. His condition was that the vehicles be donated to needy families in the local community. Robert was completely baffled by the unexpected proposal. He quickly calculated that Gervonta could be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in vehicles, a transaction that would represent one of the largest sales volumes in the dealership's history. But the condition of donating the cars transformed a profitable sale into a complex and unprecedented situation. Gervonta explained that he would personally choose the beneficiary families, prioritizing single mothers, elderly people with transportation difficulties, and young people who needed vehicles to work or study. He didn't just want to correct a mistake. He wanted to transform that day into a reminder that dignity isn't bought, but shared. He wanted the dealership to participate in the process, learning about the economic realities of people they habitually judged incapable of buying their products. The tension in the showroom was palpable while Robert considered the proposal. Other customers stopped to observe the unusual situation, some recognizing Gervonta and beginning to discreetly film with their cell phones. The manager realized his response would be crucial not only for that transaction, but for the dealership's future reputation in the local community. Robert accepted Gervonta's proposal, recognizing it was a unique opportunity to transform a serious error into something positive for the community. He called other employees and briefly explained the situation, instructing them to fully collaborate with the project. The atmosphere in the dealership changed drastically. shifting from embarrassment to expectation and curiosity about how that extraordinary situation would develop. Gervonta began selecting vehicles methodically, choosing practical and reliable models suitable for different family needs. He opted for compact SUVs for larger families, economical sedans for young professionals, and vehicles with greater height for elderly people with mobility difficulties. Each choice demonstrated careful consideration for the real needs of people who would receive the cars. During the selection process, he told Robert and other employees stories about his own childhood in Baltimore, describing the transportation difficulties his family faced. He spoke about how his mother depended on precarious public transportation to reach multiple jobs, losing precious hours that could be dedicated to family. His words humanized the situation, showing he personally understood the challenges he intended to help resolve. News of the action began spreading on social media through videos filmed by other customers present. Hashtags related to the event began gaining traction, with people sharing the story and praising Gervonta's mature response to the discrimination suffered. The dealership began receiving calls from local journalists interested in covering the unusual story. Marcus, who had been temporarily removed from his duties, watched the movement from afar. The magnitude of his error became increasingly evident as he realized the total value of the vehicles being selected. More importantly, he began genuinely understanding how his prejudices had affected not only Gervonta but probably many other customers throughout his career. By the end of the afternoon, 12 vehicles had been selected, including some hybrid models and higher-value SUVs for large families, totaling more than $1,200,000. Gervonta signed all necessary documents, transferring cash payment as promised. The showroom was now bustling with employees organizing paperwork and preparing vehicles for delivery to chosen families. The energy in the environment was electric, mixing disbelief, admiration, and expectation for what would come next. In the following weeks, Gervonta personally delivered each vehicle to selected families, accompanied by a small team from the dealership. Each delivery was an emotional moment, with reactions ranging from tears of joy to absolute disbelief. A single mother who worked 2 jobs to support 3 children finally got reliable transportation, eliminating hours of waiting at bus stops. The story gained national repercussion, being covered by major television networks and media outlets. Gervonta participated in some interviews, always emphasizing that his action wasn't about charity, but about dignity and respect. He wanted people to understand that judging others based on appearance causes real damage and misses opportunities for genuine human connections. Marcus requested a private meeting with Gervonta a few weeks after the incident. The encounter was initially tense, but the salesperson showed genuine remorse and offered sincere apologies. Gervonta accepted the apologies, explaining that everyone makes mistakes, but what's important is learning and growing from them. Marcus spent months studying unconscious bias and made a point of applying his learnings with new customers. When a young Latino entered the store months later, wearing simple clothes, he was the first to greet him with genuine respect. Premium Motors Baltimore implemented new service protocols and training programs for all employees. Robert hired diversity specialists to review their business practices and ensure all customers received respectful treatment, regardless of their appearance or origin. The dealership also established an annual fund to help community families with transportation needs. Catherine finally received a gift, a blue BMW X5, the same model Gervonta had initially chosen for her. The delivery was made in a small and intimate ceremony, with only close family members present. Her tears of joy and pride were the real prize for Gervonta, validating that the entire situation had been worthwhile. She drove the new car for the first time accompanied by her son, symbolizing how his success benefited the entire family. The legacy of that day continues impacting Baltimore and beyond. Several other local businesses reviewed their customer service practices, fearing to go through the same negative exposure. Gervonta occasionally receives messages from families who received vehicles, updating him on how the gift changed their lives. For him, these messages are constant reminders that using his platform for good can create waves of positive change that extend far beyond the initial moment.
Leave your like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next cases.